Hi everyone, thanks for joining. I'm Mike Drotis, Bible teacher and preacher, and you are watching Solving the Prophetic Puzzle. Today's lesson is about the Nephilim, or how did the Nephilim survive the flood? When Lucifer was cast out of heaven, he and his followers were cast down into the earth, and they became known as the Watchers. They watched God's crown jewel creation, man, and they began to devise an evil plan. By the seventh generation, these watchers had decided to do something that they were strictly forbidden to do. They had decided that they were going to mate with human women. Genesis chapter 6, verse 1 says, "Now it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, of all whom they chose." Verse 4, "There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men are renowned." So through the cohabitation of the angels with human females, giants were the offspring. They were not only gigantic in stature, but they were gigantic in intellect. They were strong, and these giants, as we find out, also were able to survive the flood. We read accounts of Moses, who wrote Genesis, Moses who fought and saw giants. Joshua fought giants. One of them was named Og, and then that was on the east side of the Jordan River, and then when he crossed the Jordan River into the Promised Land, he fought giants at Jericho and the 5 southern kingdoms, the Hittites, the Jebusites, the Girgashites. All of these had giants. They were full of giants. David fought Goliath. Goliath had 4 brothers. Down through history, we hear of civilizations of giants. The Indians in North America retell a story how there was great battles on the plains of North America between the Indians and gigantic men of great stature with long red hair. When Easter Island was discovered, I think in the 1900s, early 1900s, they discovered two different groups of people that lived on the islands. One was regular-sized men, and then there was another class of men that were giants, and they were looked to as gods. In the 1800s, there are countless newspaper stories that you can research for yourself and see that there were burial grounds in North America that were uncovered with gigantic bones and skeletons of giants. In fact, if you're interested, on my playlist on my YouTube channel, there's an entire documentary about the giants. If you could go and check that out at another time. Then there, in the early 2000s, the Kandahar giant of Afghanistan, where U.S. Army soldiers actually killed the giant, and then Black Ops took that giant corpse away and took it to an unknown location. There are still giants today. So how did they survive the flood? How did they survive the flood? When we read that the account of the flood covered the entire earth over the mountains. How did the giants survive the flood? I have 4 possibilities. To answer the question, how did the giants survive the flood, I would have to say, I don't know for sure. I have 4 possible explanations, but I don't know for sure. I tend to lean towards one that I will tell you it will be the last one. But here's the 4 possible explanations as to how the giants survived the flood. Number 1, they actually did not survive the flood. They were all totally annihilated. And then on the other side of the flood, the angels decided to once again mate with human females and produce offspring. That could happen, but any angel who decides to mate with human offsprings, we read in the Bible, in 1 Peter, that these angels that did this initially, these angels were then removed from the board, so to say, and they were placed in a dungeon where they still are at today, waiting for their eternal judgment. So any angel who decides to mate with human females is committing spiritual suicide. And in the first case, only 200 or so angels decided to do this, and then they were removed out of the picture. So not every angel, every fallen angel decided to go this route. Just about 200 of them did. So, number one, the angels decided to once again marry human women and mate with them. Number two, the giants, the watchers, saw what was happening when Noah was building the ark, and the watchers told the Nephilim, the giants, to build vessels. The Nephilim had the intellect, they had the time, they had the resources. They could have made these vessels. They didn't have to make a vessel the size of an ark. They could have made smaller, seaworthy vessels that they could ride out the flood. Number three, the watchers took them somewhere safe. Now, forget about interstellar travel, because the watchers are confined to this earth and this atmosphere. Lucifer is referred to as the prince of the power of the air. He can only go as far as this atmosphere of this earth goes. So they could not create a spaceship and fly to another planet. The watchers could take the Nephilim to maybe a place like Antarctica or somewhere and put them in a cryogenic freeze, and then the flood would come and they would be cryogenically frozen, and then after the flood they would be revived. That's a possibility. Or number four, the watchers manipulated the gene code after the flood, but did not have sex with human women. It's probable that Noah's three sons' wives had genetically Nephilim genetics in their blood. And if they or their seed following them had some residual Nephilim DNA, then Lucifer and his followers could tamper with the genetics of humanity, but not technically violate God's order not to have sex with human females. Satan is a legalist, and he would hold God to that. So what they would do is genetically begin to alter the DNA that was carried through the flood by Noah's women, by Noah's sons' wives. Maybe this is still going on today with the reports that people give of these alien abductions by ETs and how they are being experimented on, and how needles are being stuck into them, and things are being injected into them, and things are being pulled out of them. It could be that demons are masquerading as ETs, and these fallen angels are still trying to genetically ruin the gene code of humanity. After all, a sign of the last days that was spoken by Jesus stated that in the last days it would be as if the days of Noah. And that's where we're at right now. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. God bless.